A very good morning to you. Welcome to the West Ham Voice on Monday morning. I hope you've all had a very good weekend. Well, it looks as if our transfer business is finally up and running, and not just selling players, but actually for buying players. So this is a brief update on some of the interesting transfer news with some familiar names that we have been apparently targeting, as well as a new name that's on the list, but this time in attacking midfield. Now, today's show, will also look a little further into Graham Potter's stance on the kind of players he wants at West Ham, and he seems to be stamping his authority on who he wants to get. There seems to be none of this player purchase by general consensus nonsense that was happening last summer. So you haven't got a manager or a head coach and a technical director and an owner of a club all dipping in, looking to buy different players. The whole approach now seems to be quite firmly that Graham Potter and Carl McCauley in tandem are totally responsible for the type of players that they want coming to the club. And I'll explain how and why in a moment. So let's crack on. But before I do, if you're new to this channel, or if it's the first time that you're watching the West Ham Voice, or if you've watched me before but yet to subscribe, please become a subscriber of the channel. It costs nothing to subscribe. All the content is free. And if you enjoy the show, please do hit the like button on your way out. Now, no one could ever describe David Sullivan as being one who can multitask. The fact that it's taken him an age to get a transfer deal over the line without being able to have several other deals in the pipeline is pretty much evidence of that. So whilst we fully welcome the imminent arrival of Hadji Malick Diouf, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the deal that's been agreed, it's a deal that even Slavia Prague president Jaroslav Terzic was suggesting should have been completed by the end of June. But with no money in our back pockets, that was never going to really happen. And it has taken us, 4 days since the sale of Khannouss to finally get our first deal over the line. Still, with one deal done and hopefully at least another 4, maybe 5 or maybe even 6 to come, I do wonder just how long it's going to be before we see another arrival after Diouf. Now, reports suggest that we are in advanced talks with Girona right back Arnau Martinez. The style of both Diouf and Martinez are kind of different and similar in a roundabout sort of way. With a combined age of 42, you can see the travel of direction that Graham Potter is determined to achieve. Diouf is a dynamic wing-back who is said to be better at going forward than defending. However, we saw what he's capable of when Senegal played England recently, and the young player kept Bukayo Saka quiet for most of the game. But whilst we continue to hear constant rumours of West Ham being linked to the likes of injury-prone 28-year-old striker Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Douglas Luiz at 27, or rumour that we have actually made an inquiry for 35-year-old midfielder Jordan Henderson, the fact that we're actually completing a deal for 20-year-old Diouf and looking at completing a deal for 22-year-old Martinez, so long as Sullivan doesn't drag his heels over both deals, it tells us kind of all we need to know as to Potter's ambitions for our transfer business. As he has maintained, he's determined to bring in young, dynamic players who he believes are able to do a job now for the first team this season, but also players who would develop into becoming big players of the future. So what we're going to have to get used to at West Ham, and we shouldn't start getting upset or be surprised if this happens, is if any young player we bring in now who proves to be a sensation is likely to be sold for a bigger fee in the future. That's the direction that Graham Potter wants to take the club. And if the board back him, then this could be quite groundbreaking for West Ham in terms of our transfer strategy. However, this will only work if Potter and McCauley, of course, are backed and not interfered with from the almighty big ego that Sullivan possesses. So long as this strategy is adopted to its fullest, then the money earned from future player sales must, of course, be invested back into the squad to continue improving it. No point bringing in young dynamic players if that money is not reinvested to continue improving us. For far too long in the past, we have lost far too much money on buying big and selling low. So now this is the time to reverse that trend. Now, Potter is determined to change the DNA of the player recruitment. And since his arrival, we've heard on several occasions that he's turned down the potential of signing a number of players who do not fit that mould. And the latest player, who we were apparently chasing last summer and who now is a free agent, but is not likely to be playing football for West Ham, but more likely to be on his way to Turkey if he hasn't already been signed, is that of 28-year-old right back Kyle Walker-Peters. Now, if you recall, this time last summer, we couldn't agree on Walker-Peters to come to West Ham, and instead we signed Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and we're all glad of that, of course. And Southampton preferred to keep him despite the player being in his final year of his contract. West Ham at the time were not entertaining the fee that Southampton were demanding, and it was generally thought that West Ham would go in for the player again this summer, given that he's a free agent. But Potter has blocked that, and he's blocked any such approach. Now, I recall similar things happening when he first joined West Ham in January, Graham Potter, when he apparently turned down the chance to sign Red Bull Leipzig striker Andre Silva, who was on loan at Werder Bremen at the time. The player has a poor injury record and at 29 years of age, again, was regarded as not the right fit for us, even though we were crying out for a striker during that time. Potter also turned down the chance to sign Axel Desai on loan from Chelsea because of his high wages. And it was also suggested that Potter did not entertain the potential signing or any transfer swap of Jadon Sancho for Mohamed Kudus. So the pattern is emerging. Potter, along with Macaulay, who along with his data-driven scouting team, knows exactly who he wants at the club. And the signing of Diouf, the first signing of this summer transfer window, demonstrates that. And when the transfer business is done, Potter will then need to ensure, of course, that he's putting out teams who are not only going to be successful in terms of winning games, but providing fans with a style of entertaining football that we desperately crave. And if Potter achieves that, then perhaps we finally have a forward-thinking head coach who can not only be good for this club for the immediate future, but maybe for the long haul as well. So let's get on to Diouf, because as we know, he played his final game for Slavia Prague on Sunday. It was a friendly. He came on in the 90th minute, and the club did right by him. They actually gave him the opportunity to come on and say goodbye. Now, the deal is worth 22 million euros, or no, 19 million euros, sorry. Deal is worth 19 million euros with 4 million euros in add-ons. So none of this 22 million pounds malarkey that we're hearing to sort of up the price. It's 19 million euros, 4 million euros in add-on fees. But the understanding is that we've agreed to a much higher sell-on fee in order to get this deal over the line. Now, that kind of makes sense because Slavia Prague was saying, you know, we want a figure we're starting with a 2. They've agreed to 19 million euros. But the fact that they've actually agreed to have a higher sell-on clause means that should we sell Diouf in the future for big money, then Slavia Prague will benefit from that. Now, there are different types of sell-on clauses, and I was trying to work out what does it mean when it's a higher than usual sell-on clause. Well, there's the sell-on clause where there's a flat percentage of anything between 10 to 25%, which applies to future transfer fees. And then there's a profit-based sell-on clause, which could usually be anything between 10 to 20%, which applies only to the profit made on a resale of a player. And then there's a variable clause where the player's market value might significantly appreciate in the future. Look, at the time of recording this show, it's 8 o'clock on Monday morning. I don't know the exact details of the sell-on clause, but the most commonly used one is the profit-based one. So I imagine by the sound of it that we're probably going to be likely closer to the 20% sell-on than the 10%. So say for argument's sake, Diouf does really well in the future and we sell him for £50 million. Slavia Prague will receive 20% of the profit that we make from the player. Look, it will still leave West Ham United with a very healthy profit if the player becomes a £50 million signing in the future. So what of him? I talked about him the other day, but let's recap on what he's got to bring to West Ham. He's got pace to burn, which is one thing that we've been lacking in the West Ham team throughout all of last season. In order to get the full potential of the player, Potter is showing his cards, but likely to be going with a back five, possibly a back five, or maybe a three with a four in the middle. And if it's a four in the middle, you can see three centre backs, Diouf on the left side of a four, Wan-Bissaka on the right side of a four, with two maybe holding defenders. And that allows, at the different formations allows Potter to utilise Somerville and utilise Bowen. If we go with a five, he can go with a 5-4-1. So you could have Wan-Bissaka on one side with Bowen and Diouf on the other side with Somerville, overlapping those defenders, overlapping those midfielders. So it's looking positive. Potter knows exactly what he's going to get and how he's going to use this player when he arrives. Now, in the season and a half that Diouf has been with Slavia Prague, he made 50 appearances, scoring 9 goals and has 4 assists. His presence at the club has been so effective that I mentioned a moment ago that the player was given a standing ovation and a fantastic send-off, not only from his teammates, not only from the club staff, but also from the fans themselves. I'm getting a notification. Let me just see if there's... Okay, no details. And the send-off was very impressive indeed. So I think we're going to get ourselves a player that looks like is going to be quite valuable for West Ham. Doesn't matter about his age. He's already an international as well. I'm looking forward to his signing. That should be announced sometime later today. What about other players? So I mentioned a moment ago, Martinez. Arnau Martinez, developed through the Girona youth ranks, has made 125 senior appearances, scoring 9 goals, plus an impressive 18 assists. Now, what is also appealing with Martinez, as I mentioned earlier, is that he's versatile to be able to not only play as a right back, he can play as a right wing back, but he can also play as a central defender as well. And he's got a ridiculously cheap release clause in his contract of just 12 million euros. And that's someone who apparently we're going for. So let's see if it happens, especially with details that we're looking at moving on. 1, maybe 2 of our central defenders. Martinez would fit right in. Then, of course, the news that broke again, I said some names that we've been linked to before, is Harvey Elliott. Now, whilst many fans suggest that there's no way that we can get this player to West Ham, reports suggest otherwise. Elliott was seen in tears in the last game of the last season for Liverpool, which seemed to suggest that the player himself knows that he's going to be leaving in order to be able to get game time elsewhere. Now, with suggestions that Liverpool want anything between 40 to 50 million pounds for the player, a lot of pundits believe that a more realistic price is between 30 to 40 million, given his lack of Premier League experience. And West Ham are apparently looking for a way to find an agreement to sign the player. Now, I put up there in my picture that one of the approaches could be a loan with an option to buy. Now, it's been suggested that Liverpool, if they sell him, will want to sell him for with a deal, a permanent deal with a buyback clause. Now, great, West Ham will have a player for maybe a season or two. But as I said in previous shows, what if Liverpool come knocking on the door in a season or two's time and saying, right, we want to buy our player back? Whereas a loan with an option to buy might be better suited to West Ham. We don't have to fork out a lot of money in advance, and we can agree with an option to buy, which leaves it open for Liverpool to turn around and say, well, he's done really well. We want him back at the club. Or they could turn around and say, well, okay, yeah, he's done all right, but yeah, we'll sell him to you. So it's going to be interesting to see what deal we can do. Look, 30, 40 million pounds, I agree. It's going to be too much for West Ham to get over the line. But with a loan with an option to buy, would we go with an obligation? That'd be more like buying him now. So I don't think Liverpool would agree to that. But it might tempt Liverpool to say, yeah, okay, a loan with an option to buy. Let's see how we get on by at the end of the season, and we go from there. Look, at 22, Elliott is desperate for first team football. He's fully aware that the players Liverpool have been buying leaves little scope for that. Now, to be honest with you, maybe the tragic death of Diogo Jota might change things. I don't know. But he's made only 28 appearances last season, with only 6 as a starter, and only 2 of those was a starter in the Premier League. Now, many fans are saying Elliott is a right-sided player, so where would he fit in? Would we not have the same problem as we had with Mohamed Kudus? But I think Potter would believe that Elliott can be played in a attacking midfield role, central midfield role, maybe a number 10 or just behind. So I think Potter thinks he's more versatile than Kudus was, hence why it looks like we're going for the player. He's got great tactical awareness. Who can easily be played in the centre, and he's got an abundance of energy. Look, I won't lie. I've got my preference. I like Elliott. I think he's a decent player. But if it was my choice, I'd be looking at trying to get James McAtee from Man City. He'd be a lot cheaper too as well. But there is another name that was added late last night, and that's attacking midfielder. Leicester's 21-year-old Moroccan Bilal El Khannouss. Now, he signed for Leicester last summer in a £20 million deal. And in his first season, he made 36 appearances, scoring 3 goals and assisting in 5 for a struggling Leicester side. He developed through the Genk youth ranks and made 94 senior appearances for that club. He wasn't a prolific goal scorer. He's not actually a prolific goal scorer, with only 4 goals for them at the time. But he is a creative midfielder who did set up 14 assists in his time for Genk. He's got excellent ball control, a good range of passing skills, and he's got decent pace. However, I don't know if he's really the finished article. And when you look at him, Elliott, McAtee, of the 3 for me, I think McAtee is probably just that bit more advanced. Elliott very close behind him. Maybe Khannouss there or thereabouts. I guess Khannouss has got the advantage of having had a whole season in the Premier League. Look, I think it's evident what's happening here. Graham Potter is not going to be swayed for going for players that he doesn't want. He's turned down a number of opportunities to bring various players in. It looks pretty much like, Diouf is definite. He'll be doing he'll be unveiled. Maybe later today or maybe Tuesday. Martinez is going to be interesting to see what happens there. Elliott will be interesting to see where we go with that one as well. If we do offer a loan with an option to buy, I think Liverpool will be very, very tempted in agreeing to that. That's it for now. I'm sure there'll be more news later on today, so I'll catch up with you later. Thank you for watching and listening. It's exciting. I think it's going to be an exciting week. Finally, we're up and running. It's taken a long while. It's taken 6 weeks of the transfer. We're in the 7th week now, I think. But look, now it looks like we're finally on our way to getting in some more players. Thank you for watching and listening. I'll be back again later today. I'll see you all soon. Have a wonderful Monday.